Welcome back to the cityCURRENT Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be joined by our next guest, Kate Gazaway. She is the founder and educator of Picture Change. How are you doing, Kate?
I'm great, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing well. So your world is using photography and art to create transformation and conversations. Give us a little bit of history, especially for you being the founder. Give us some history for Picture Change.
Yeah, it all kind of started in college when I decided to switch my majors to photography. And I realized that I could speak and reach people more, I don't know, in a stronger way through photography than through words alone. I mean, they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. And I found I would go on these service trips or mission trips growing up, but then when I came back with these photos, people started asking questions, wanting to know more. It really humanized a lot of maybe the statistics or stories you were hearing. So I started with that. I majored in photojournalism. I started doing a lot of humanitarian photography. But then I realized maybe I'm not the best person to be telling these stories. The local people had the access, the knowledge, the accuracy to their own story. They just lacked education and resources. So that's when I realized that was in Nicaragua in 2011. I was like, okay, what if I started teaching locals how to tell their own story through photography? How would that impact poverty in that area? How would that impact how we tell stories, how they are perceived coming from a local?
Well, and like you said, pictures are powerful. Your brain processes image so much faster than words. And to your point, you see context, you see emotion, it draws out emotion, it evokes emotion, it can start a conversation. And when you're dealing in countries and worlds that we might not be able to travel to or know much about, it allows you to find common ground and to start those sort of conversations. But then to your point, when you give those tools and those assets and resources to the locals and say, no, wait a second, you tell your own story.
Right.
That's one piece of it, is the training, but then it's a whole nother piece of the kind of the raising of awareness and using those skills and using their story to then draw the connectivity to create the change. So talk about kind of those two layers. One is the training and the equipment side, but then the next is the actual, okay, what do you do with the images to actually create momentum? So start with the training side.
Yeah, it's always kind of hard to tell people what I do because it's so multifaceted and there is a ripple effect with it. So as far as the training goes, we always partner with a local organization, someone who's already established there, they know the students, and so they choose the students who would be a good fit for this program. And then we start with basics. Some of my students had never held a camera before. So we start with the basics and then move into documentary storytelling. Why is storytelling important? Why is your story important? So there is some level of, I guess, self-realization and discovering their innate creativity that maybe they never were asked because they're in survival mode. So realizing the value and importance of your own story, but then seeing your community in a different way. And a lot of times maybe common problems that are occurring, or you're in a rut, if you look at it from a different perspective, you can start finding new solutions. And so with the training, I always try to, whatever that looks like in this cultural context, involve the locals. I've had meetings with elders in the community, all of those things to say, how can we best support these students and help them succeed? And it's been really incredible. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I have so many stories of just seeing the students realize the value of their own community, the beauty of where they're from. So with it, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, can we carry that forward? Because even on my end, I'm thinking, what from a documentary style, what are some things that make for a good story? So as you're talking about storytelling, you hand somebody a camera and you say, okay, we're teaching you the basics, but then to your point, there is an art form of telling a story. So what are some of those tips that you like to make sure that you instill?
Near the end of the project, after we do the basics, we do interview skills. So how can you be an active listener with someone? And it's kind of giving them official permission to maybe talk to their parents or grandparents who it's kind of taboo to ask certain questions. But if you put it in an official way, like, oh, I have to do this for class. So we work on how, like, what kind of questions do you want to ask your parents? What was this hard when you went through that war or you had to flee your home? What is it like to be hungry? You know, all of these sorts of things. And I remember one of my students in Nicaragua, he interviewed his mom, who's just like single mom, hardworking, and that brought them a lot closer together because, you know, you don't talk about stuff like that. You don't talk about the hard things. And so I think that's really opened them up to learning more about themselves and being closer to their family. But then also providing a valuable asset to their community, telling those stories. A lot of my students, I might be jumping ahead, but a lot of my students have gone on to work as professional photographers in their area. So they're providing wedding photography, quinceañeras. A lot of them have been hired by other nonprofits in the area to tell these stories as well. So it's been really incredible to see that develop and to see, I mean, we've been in some of the most rural places and people will run out and say, hey, can I have that photo for my Facebook? You know, everyone's connected. And so people realize the value of that media, the quality media especially.
Give us one of the stories you were alluding to before of just you see the light bulb go off and the child realize that this can be a powerful opportunity for them to take control of their own story.
Yeah, one of my dearest friends, Rosa, she was one of my first students and my translator back in 2011. And I'd say she's really who I based Picture Change off of. She caught the vision and then she made it appropriate for her cultural context. So she's one of the ones that has been working and earning money. But I remember I got contacted by a solar power company in New York, and they were doing a project in Nicaragua. They Googled photographers and they found my name. I connected them with Rosa, so they hired her to go to this very rural area to photograph the project they were doing in northern Nicaragua. And she told me on the bus ride after the project, she was alone and she started crying for the second time ever in her life, crying of happiness, because she was a woman earning her own money, traveling by herself and helping others. And that's, you know, where she's from. She's just expected to get married and have kids and care for the family. But here she was working and doing something valuable and helping other people. So, yeah.
And I think that's, to your point, it's empowerment, it's entrepreneurialism, it's art, it's communication, it's breaking down barriers. There's so much to what you do that it starts with the idea of let's go in and equip, and then it turns into transformation. Talk about the next phase of this is, okay, so after they've got the skill sets and they're moving forward, how do you then take those moments and activate?
Right. So near the end of every project, we do our best to equip them to continue themselves. So whether that's starting their own photography specific social media pages, building a website. We do our best wherever we are to bring in other professional photographers or people from the newspaper. So making those local connections. And then, you know, social media here, showing their work online. We have online gallery shows. People can purchase the student photos that we give the money back to the student, you know, that sort of thing as well. And it's been really powerful too, I think, because there are, you know, stereotypes around poverty and people in poverty. So if you're expecting this one image of a child with, you know, the stereotypical image of poverty, but then you see this woman laughing or kids playing in dirty water, but they're you know, they're telling the stories from their perspective, and that's with dignity, not with a poverty filter that we so often see these countries in. So I think that's the biggest thing is providing a platform for dignity and telling truth with stories, even if they are difficult, to do that with dignity, not with, I guess, condescension, you know?
Yeah, no, and there's a big difference. So on your end, you mentioned Nicaragua, Uganda. I mean, you've been in many different places, but now Nashville is a piece of that as well. And obviously that's where you are and live, in your hometown. So it's like, talk about from a global perspective, but then a local perspective, and collaborating with NICE, Nashville International Center of Empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the year, or the word for the year 2020 is pending. Um, so we were supposed to do a project with Nashville International Center for Empowerment back in May and June. But of course, you know, everyone knows what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have actually talked to a few other organizations about doing mini projects as well, with local students, with Harvest Hands, with a few other organizations, but we can't confirm anything because we don't know what's happening.
All of that will say to be continued.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Nashville's been a place for me to come, like, sleep and have friends and all that, but I think I really wanted to be invested here. I've been here for 7 years now. And some of our new neighbors from around the world are here, down in Antioch, down Nolensville Pike. And so I think providing that connection, that bridge from old Nashville to new Nashville, because it's growing so much and changing so much. So it's almost a way of just, let's get to know our neighbors and hear their story, hear where they're from. We actually did a project in 2014 here called Redefining Refugee, in partnership with the, their name just left me. It was the Tennessee Foreign Language Institute, ESL to go. And sorry. Yeah, and we redefining refugee. Like, what do you think of with a refugee? But a lot of these refugees were surgeons in their country or business owners, but now they're janitors or working in factories, but they're safe here. And so how can we bridge that gap of preserving your culture and where you're from in this new context? And so that's transferring some of that to this project. We wanted the students to still have an appreciation for where they're from, even though that might be a difficult or have negative memories with that. But then also show us, like, what is your life here? Let's figure out what that looks like for you. How can you communicate and tell your story in this new place? So we're still talking about it, working on it. A lot of it just kind of depends on what we can do. We've talked about doing online classes, but that would still be pretty difficult, especially when you need to go out and take photos of people and get them involved with other local photographers. Like Jeremy Cowart has been a huge support. He's an incredible photographer down in Franklin. Yeah, so yeah, we're still being hopeful and in communication. And as soon as it's safely possible to move forward with this, we plan on doing that.
Talk about how all of this, everything that you're doing with Picture Change, how has it changed you?
Ooh. I think the biggest thing is defining how I approach and work with people in poverty or people who have less than. One time I was trying to write some fundraising thing and I called Rosa, my student in Nicaragua. I was like, Rosa, what do I call you? Because she's like, well, I know we don't have a lot, but I don't think of myself as poor. And I know you need people to give you money to do this. But in the end, like, I feel rich in so many other ways. So I don't know what you should call me.
It's a very difficult conversation, though, I think, because to your point, I think the philanthropic community, the detriment is we ask for labels, right? It's like, oh, well, we need to know that you're spending your time helping those who are less fortunate. Mm-hmm. But to your point, as soon as you put a label on somebody, it's a derogatory thing that they themselves don't see themselves as impoverished or less than, or, and I think it's a very interesting conversation that we'll have another day, but it's a very interesting conversation that I think is deeply rooted in a lot of change that needs to happen.
Right. And so with me, it's like, if I see a situation or if I'm going to work somewhere, I approach it more with curiosity than with already knowing what needs to be done, already knowing how to help people, just getting rid of the whole hero mentality and coming into it with humility. How can we work together to create change here? Not what can I do for you? I mean, as much fun as it is to look cool on the internet, I'd rather create lasting change and involve people and figure out what is sustainable for each of these situations we're in.
I love the idea of going in with curiosity, going in with open arms and curiosity. I think that in and of itself is great advice. What other advice would you give to those who seek to create change based on what you've seen and the lessons you've learned? Give me one other bit of advice that you would encourage for others.
To make a plan. I started Picture Change when I was 24, and I had a lot of passion and a lot of time. And I'm 34 now, and the passion is still there, but I realize, you know, if I made more of a plan to direct, how can I direct these resources and this energy, and how can I create a greater impact? So kind of balancing that passion with making the plan. And I wasn't always patient with everything, and I'd rather just hop on a plane and go. But in the end, I've been reading a lot of business and leadership books in quarantine, and setting goals, making a plan, and then bringing other people into those. I did a lot of things myself because I didn't want to potentially deal with other people. I'm not a group projects person. But in the end, it's, if you want to go further, do it with other people. And so that's what I would say is make that plan, really establish what you want, and then go for it. And involve as many people as possible that can create that dream. Yeah, it's been really cool to see how many people have come around Picture Change and into Picture Change. And now if I do plan my future projects, I involve my students from all over. We're still in communication online. It's like, hey, will this work? Is this offensive? That sort of thing. I really try to involve them and run that by them. And as soon as we can, they were gonna, two of my students in Uganda are starting their own Picture Change projects there. Teaching other people how to be professional photographers or assistants as job opportunities. So
that's awesome. Yeah. The cycle will perpetuate and ever continue, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. Talk about how we can help you.
Yeah. So we have done all of our projects with donated cameras and gear. All of those cameras and gear are left with the partner organization. So students have the opportunities to work to earn those cameras to continue their career. So we need gear. We need nice digital cameras, digital for now, or even smartphones. One of my students ran his whole business with an iPhone 5 that was donated because he could take the photos and do everything from that. And then the finances, all of our fundraising plans for the year kind of got thrown out the window. So when we do this project, we will need help with that. And then I think in the end too, just checking out the students' photos. If you want to buy them, please purchase them. As much as I can, I still am in communication with them to give them money. And, you know, sometimes that's all that's getting them through now in these COVID times because they can't work anywhere else. And so these photo sales have really helped literally buy them food. So those are the biggest things right now.
And then the last question is, where do we go? So talk about website, social media. How do we see the pictures and purchase them and contact you and be in touch and help raise awareness?
Yeah, great. Our website is picture-change.org. On Instagram, Facebook, we're just at Picture Change. Vimeo, we have a few videos up there. With our Instagram, a few of our students have done Instagram takeovers, so they've submitted photos and captions from all over the world. Yeah, and then through our website, you can contact me if you want to buy any photos. We partner with a few different printers, so we can have those sent to you.
Well, Kate, thank you for all you do. Make sure everyone check out picture-change.org. Get involved. Kate, greatly appreciate all you're doing, and thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jeremy, so much.